Core Stories, Ordinary Marines, Extraordinary Lives.
Hey everybody. This month's podcast is really interesting because Rob West and I hash out a brilliant idea he comes up with. He's a real innovator. It's kind of awesome. He's a Marine who never left the Marine Corps community. He's never left the technical engineering cyber piece of the Marine Corps need. It's his passion, and he loves it. And right here on the podcast, he comes up with a brilliant solution in response to the commandant's request, basically, last month, out to the press saying, "Hey, we need innovation. What can the community bring?" So enjoy this. Anyway, I'll catch you on the backside, but please hit subscribe because we're just publishing monthly now that I'm working on my PhD. If I'm going to finish this in any kind of a reasonable time frame, then I can't do the podcast more frequently than that. But the other thing is that finding quality guests is no small chore. I have to say that if you are listening to a podcast and they have great guests, they have a great hunter on that team, because it is a hunt to find just the right person to do these interviews. And I have been very, very fortunate with Core Stories Innovators, with the guests I've had. But it's a search. Anyway, catch you on the backside.
So, how are you today?
I'm fine. Now listen, Rob, I'm going to try to do this without headphones. So it'll be the first time I've recorded one without using the headphones. I thought that's a beautiful swordfish behind you.
That's an Atlantic sailfish. Oh yeah, I don't hang nothing unless I caught it. And then, hold on. Bubba, he's an 8.
8.
This is the only room in the house I'm allowed to decorate with, of course, approval. So
Allowed to decorate with license, right?
I'm allowed to be overridden or overruled at any minute.
I'm glad to see you today.
Good to see you also.
So let's go back to you for just a second. I really wanted to talk about this organization. We'll talk about your background, but I want to talk about the organization you're into now.
Sure. Because
you said something interesting to me, the way you talked about Guidepoint.
I always, since I got into this business, I've always been a huge admirer of the engineers that I've been privileged to work with. Those are the guys that actually make the rubber meet the road. And what I mean by that is, when you go into a selling situation in any sales environment, specifically with information technology, the smart guys that actually make the technology work, make the networks hum, they're engineering types. They're wired for that. That's what they do. They don't want to talk to or hear from the salesperson. They want to talk engineer to engineer. The credibility that I bring to the table when selling into DoD specifically, and especially the Marine Corps, is I was a communicator in a war uniform, specifically in the Marine Corps. I was not in a climate controlled environment, as some of my other communicators like to point out, sleeping on the ground and swimming in salt water and fresh, doing all those jump and dive and crazy things that we do in the reconnaissance community. However, when I sell into an account, I'm very humble, and I do a lot of listening and a little bit of talking. And my job is to open the opportunity with the engineers, because when I open up the opportunity with the credibility that I bring to the table, I know their mission first and what their goals and objectives are. And then I translate that over to the engineer. The engineer may or may not have been in uniform, but they know the technology and they understand that specific technology very well. And so I'm that catalyst between the two. But once I know that my engineer understands, okay, this is what they're trying to get from point A to point B, and this is their challenges. This is what I believe is the best way to communicate that on how this solution is going to fit their problem. I'm done.
So talk about in the big picture, the 30-second pitch. What is it that Guidepoint Security does?
So Guidepoint is homegrown through two gentlemen that actually came out of the Department of Defense and with the DoD, wore the uniform. They started a company called Guidepoint Security to start focusing on that software security need for the DoD and the government, because as technology was rapidly changing and growing, the pace of the government could not keep up. So they were like that consultative, trusted advisor back into the federal government to say, hey, look, I know you're here. How do we get you to here? And from point A to point, not jam a thing at them, not sell something at them, but how do we communicate with our industry partners that make that better mousetrap and tune it into the goal and the mission objective of our federal customer. And by coming in as a trusted advisor and as a consultative nature, that's allowed the customer to feel comfortable, because most of the customers in the federal space right now, everybody wants to fix something that's broken with them. Everybody wants to say, I've got a better shiny thing right here. Here's why you need to buy it, without doing any due diligence on their background or what the mission commander or the chief of staff of that branch of service, what their vision is. Nobody takes into account what the actual customer's vision is and then tune their solution or their product into their mission-oriented goals. And that's a huge downfall for a lot of the industry, that they know they've got this good product. They know they can help the government fix a lot of the issues that they have, but they're not messaging it correctly. So, and that's from a lack of understanding the actual customer or the federal government, specifically DoD's mission. What are their troubles? What have been their shortfalls in information technology? It's not about that big data center that's sitting on Quantico, Virginia. It's the infantryman who's the tip of the spear that's trying to communicate through command and control, because he or she's in front of the enemy, trying to kill the enemy and communicate and move and resupply. And, whatever communication needs to go on, that's constantly changing and constantly being threatened and challenged by our adversaries. And they're doing it. It's not force on force anymore like the big Cold War we used to have. It's these guys, unfortunately, I think a lot of our adversaries are being educated over here because they are smart people. And then they go back home and then they teach and educate their people, whatever that may be, specific around information technology. Gosh, it's been 20 years almost since a couple guys went down the road here in Daytona Beach and went to Embry-Riddle and learned how to fly a plane. They ain't from around here. They're from somewhere else, and went back home, organized, and then came back over here and attacked. And that's what they're doing through IT now.
And so you and I became acquainted because of this very thing. The Commandant of the Marine Corps said in a recent news opportunity, fighting in the future is a whole different ball game. We can't do it the same old way. We need to approach it almost wholly from a technology standpoint. And who can bring it? Who's bringing it for the Marine Corps was basically the point of the story. Who's bringing innovation? Who can? And that's how you and I became acquainted. The thing that was interesting to me is that
you served in the Marine Corps as a young man, and you've never really left the Marine Corps community professionally. So talk us about that journey. Tell us that journey.
Sure, I was out. So I served active duty 90 to 94 as a field radio operator. So the communication of it all, the push to talk kind of guy, and ended up serving in a reconnaissance unit in a battalion, subsequently in a team, 5 to 6 man team in a line platoon. So when I got out, as I went back and started working on my college degree back in Northern Virginia, where I was originally from, just kind of knew somebody who was I was looking for a job, not a job, but a career. And I was fortunate enough to go to work for a company in 1995 that was specialized in reselling products into the federal space. And because of my background, I was hired solely because I was in the Marine Corps, because I was working on a degree, didn't have a degree. And back then they wanted their IT sales folks to have 4-year college degrees. So I was actively working on a college degree, going to school at night while I was at work. So the work ethic and the op tempo that I had active duty kind of carried me forward in my career and also in my education. So when we went through a small restructure at the company I was with, it went from like an inside sales focused sales model into, okay, we're going to have both. We're going to have inside sales and outside sales. We want folks out in front of the customer trying to sell. And I was fortunate enough where I pretty much had proven myself. And they said, well, if you could call on any account, what would it be? And I said, the Navy and the Marine Corps. And the rest is history from there. And quickly entrenched myself in the right places with the right folks based off what I knew as a Marine on who to go and call on to try to sell information technology. And everything was disconnected back then. But then as the IT requirements grew, so did the complexity of the networks. And then watching the Navy and the Marine Corps evolve into this enterprise customer, of which they did through a contract called NMCI, which was the Marine Corps Internet, which was originally owned by, at the time, EDS. And so the transition you saw was as this IT monster started to grow, the Navy and the Marine Corps is like, hey, we're getting away from what our true doctrine is, what our true mission is. This IT thing is a must-have. However, we feel the best approach to take on this enterprise network that's growing exponentially is we probably need to hire somebody that knows what they're doing. So the Marine Corps and the Navy, obviously because we are part of the Department of the Navy, signed a contract with the EDS to take over network ownership and services. So the contractor actually owned the enterprise network and operated the enterprise network. Now, fast forward in my career, I go to work for a manufacturer now, calling back into the Department of Defense, but I still had my toe in the water with the Marine Corps. Eventually, as I moved around in my career, I started to get hired into those companies as a Marine Corps rep. The company A is looking for someone to cover down on the Marine Corps. So that's where I became more marketable, specifically selling into the Marine Corps, because my experience and background was growing in the IT community, but my background, my strong suit was selling into the Marine Corps, which is not easy. It's not easy at all. I think one of the advantages I have, believe it or not, is the fact that I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a corporal. And I was low on the totem pole. So when I would go into, even to this day, I've been out 25 years, even to this day, it's a little unnerving to have a captain say yes, sir, to me, because, I didn't have gray hair, when I got out of the Marine Corps. But now that I'm older, it's just, that's the way Marines carry themselves. I don't care how old they are, how long they've been out. It's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. No matter how old we get, it's just how we treat others with respect.
Let me stop you there, because
Sure.
that's a cultural thing that's important that you bring up.
Yes.
First of all, many people outside of the Marine Corps may not realize that rank is very much attached to the job you have or your MOS,
Yes.
your specialty.
Mhm.
So there are specialties, MOSs, where you can gain rank quickly, and there are ones that it takes forever.
Yes.
Rank. You could be in 15 years and be a sergeant or a staff sergeant or something.
Yes.
So I learned a long time ago not to assess someone by their rank based on their time in, because,
That's a very good assessment, Meriwether. Very good assessment.
well, it's important. I mean, the Marine Corps knows better than I do why this person has this rank at this stage of service. So that's sort of something to frame the situation you're talking about. When you
Yes.
say that, I want to clarify that.
So, yeah, and to expand on my comment about what I've always viewed as a benefit of coming out of the Marine Corps as only a corporal, but I did 4 years, is how humble I am no matter who I talk to. Because if I talk to the young Marine who may be a Lance Corporal, I was that guy,
Yeah.
and I let them know, hey, I was once you. So I understand where you're coming from. So, hey, Lance Corporal, how do we not piss off the Sergeant Staff Sergeant today? Kind of break the ice with them a little bit. But then you get up in the higher ranks of stuff. And so the protocols, where I've gone into meetings with leadership, and this is one thing a lot of people don't know, especially former officers may or may not know. When I go to see senior leadership, for instance, I would go to headquarters Marine Corps, I would go see the CIO of the Marine Corps, who was a 1-star general. Before I'd go and see his admin, who made the appointment for me to come see him, I would, out of respect, go straight to the Master Guns office first, announce myself to the Master Guns, let them know why I'm there. And of course, they either recognize me or they would say, okay, let's go see the general's aide. And then I would go through the formal process and go on to see the general. I've always done that because that's the level of respect for the command as a whole that will always bode you well. And it has been a couple times where I've done that, and the Master Guns or the senior enlisted may say, well, he's not here. What are you here for? And, they're a communicator themselves, and they're the ones who were actually doing the work before they came into the command, right? And
Right.
So you can have a discussion with him or her about why you're there, and it's a pretty good, discussion, because they were probably just doing it before they got to the command, and to have their input, because you always want that enlisted input or that other input from other members of the command, because everyone's got a different view of things. And when you can incorporate everyone's views into what you're trying to message, you end up with a more success rate of what you're trying to accomplish within that command. And to be a little more detailed around my comment about, what's boded me well to be only a corporal when I came out, I've seen senior enlisted and I've seen 05s, 06s retire, get out, go to work for industry, and come back in to call on the Marine Corps. And they quickly learn that it is not any easier for them than it is for the rest of us. And I think it's a harder transition for somebody, came out as a battalion commander or a regimental commander or some command or some joint billet, and now they're in a suit instead of a uniform, and they're just going to stroll the halls of, Mark or Syscom or somewhere like that, thinking, well, I'll just call up my old buddy so-and-so. And that reality sets in a little harder for them, that once they're on our side of the fence, that it quickly becomes customer vendor, not buddy to buddy. I mean, yes, there are situations to where a friendship does take place and is a benefit, but that person that's still in uniform has to be careful, because of favoritism or inside information and stuff. Because contracting officers are very strict and have a lot of integrity when it comes to anything in and around.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you are in a position of influence, you got to sit out 1 year before you can come back in and call on wherever you retired out of.
Yeah.
Where us guys, us corporals, we don't have that problem. We just go, right? But it all is changing. Plus, the dynamic has changed now too, Meriwether, to where industry right now, we would absolutely fall all over ourselves to have that 6 type certified, security clearance, experienced. That's who we want. We don't care where you went to school. You don't even have a college degree. That resource that the DoD is now providing with that skill set, specific around IT, is very marketable.
That was the whole point of this interview, the whole point of seeking candidates for this podcast is that, I love university. I love higher education. I love the brain work of it. I love sitting around thinking thing. But I don't love it because my goal is to have a great career and go on down that road. I have other goals. If I were 21, that wouldn't, a higher degree, a postgraduate degree would not be the way I would want to go now.
Right.
Based on exactly what you're saying. Further, it used to be perceived that certificates in technology, these computer systems certificates, were limiting, that you would get the certificate, you would get a position, and you'd be stuck in that position for 5 years doing the same thing, like you say, in a climate controlled environment. For the next 5 years, you would be jamming numbers. But that's not the truth, is it? That's not the way it really is.
No.
So talk about that. Talk about how it goes on.
Yeah, so what you know today is not going to do you any good 5 years from now. If you're not ripening, you're rotting, right? So the guys that I know that are certified, there is some sort of other certification or advanced certification that they want to pursue. So if they come in at an entry level, they're probably managed by upper management and their direct report that, okay, you're going to start off at this salary with this certification. However, you go and pass this certification, we're going to bump you up. Because then that makes you more marketable for that company you represent, to where they want to outsource you or provide you on a contract or sell your hours on site with a customer. So the technology that you're comfortable with today, you need to challenge yourself to go outside of your comfort zone. You better go learn something else also. Because now with the way technology is flowing, if a technology vendor has a great product, but it doesn't play nice with other technologies on the network or in the enterprise, it's quickly going to get pushed out. So those who know something very well today better start learning other technologies that integrate together and play together. So if your job is to focus on this one technology while you're at work, all of a sudden bells and whistles are going off over here. How does it impact your technology that you're hired to maintain or provide?
So how does Guidepoint deal with that?
Because we're very strict with our engineers. So it's the first company I've ever worked for. We have more engineers employed than we do sales or any other employees. That says a lot about our company. The people that we hire are very well vetted by the other engineers in the company before they are brought on board. So normally the folks that we bring in, we don't bring in entry-level engineers. We bring in experienced, certified engineers, because the type of customers that we work for and that we pursue expect nothing less than an expert to show up on site from Guidepoint, period. And the way that they perform once they're on site is second to none. And it's a direct reflection of the type of people that we hire at Guidepoint that we provide to our customers. And our customers absolutely love them. And what ends up happening is that as that rapport and that relationship builds between the company, the employee, and the customer, a lot of reliability falls on the shoulders of that engineer by Guidepoint. I see it all the time. And they become a trusted advisor. And the customer really needs that trusted advisor because
very attached. Yep.
you're here today, and typical Marine Corps fashion, you got to go to Okinawa,
Yeah.
and you're out, right? Well, the contract is still there. So when the new guy comes on board, you know, and he gets his in brief about what's happening, what's going on, it's kind of a nice to know that when the new guy shows up, that contractor on site who's been making things hum for a while, he's still there, and he can educate the new Marine who's now assigned to that duty. Hey, sir, this is how things have been running for a while. Here's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Here's where some things I think you need to be aware of. And that's the type of people we hire. It's not like, oh, just leave me alone, sit in my cubicle, or got my laptop, and I'm just going to make this, you know, I'm going to make this box hum. They're involved day-to-day operations with the
That's
customer
interesting.
on the bigger picture. Those are the type of people that we employ.
That's
So-
very interesting. So I hadn't appreciated that the Marine Corps, it's reassuring, I guess, a better way to say it. It's reassuring to know that the Marine Corps is bringing in these experts, like you say, high-level engineers, to work directly with Marines to ensure technological communications are working live well. As I mentioned in my last podcast, I'm doing them monthly now that I'm working on my PhD program instead of weekly as I did last year. I interviewed Valerie Jackson, who heads the Krulak Center. She mentioned something about the importance of communications and what would happen in this scenario, what happened in that scenario. And based on news reports, even today, I think about what happens if Marines or our troops get isolated technologically. They're out somewhere and they have no more internet. They have no more sat phone. They have no ability to communicate in what is now absolutely the most elementary way, be considered the most elementary ways. It's reassuring, although I'm not looking to go down any classified roads, to think that there's solutions for that. The Marine Corps has solutions for that. The Marine Corps, our military, has a plan for that. In elementary terms, in sort of everyday terms, can you talk about how we move forward with worst case scenarios for big and small pictures? I mean, I understand that we've launched this Space Force. The Marine Corps has retired the tank, although it has launched a new amphibious vehicle this year.
Yes, the AAAV, yes. Mm-hmm.
Warfare is different. Warfare's moving forward is different. How do you see it? How do you see it, and how do you see it?
Well, without divulging too much information, the Marine Corps a number of years ago, I believe it was General Neller, says we got to get back to basics. When I mean back to basics, I mean you got to break out your compass, not your GPS on your watch or your phone. You're going to break out a compass, and you're going to have a map, and you're going to do navigation that way. You're going to do nautical navigation. It may be by the stars. You know, I was taught nautical navigation back when I was active duty, you know, and it was with a map or, you know, a compass. That was it. And now fast forward, I'm most positive that the Marine Corps has a contingency for the what ifs. Of course, you can never plan 100%.
No.
That's where the training kicks in for a lot of our Marines, to where they're very innovative and they'll figure it out. Because
Yes.
I think the mindset of, you know, when this thing first kicked off with General Neller and now with General Berger, is that crop of Marine that's coming in now, they know IT. They know how to utilize the tools. How do we tap into that resource?
Yes.
However, we still need to train them up on the basics. So we're going to take your little cell phone away, your little internet access. Now you got to do some real thinking. Now you're going to have to really apply yourself. Probably wouldn't hurt too bad to have a calling card with you in case you got to get a hold of a phone. I've done that before. I've gotten a hold of a landline somewhere and made a call with a calling card. Because
That number.
I'm not going to go where I was or why I was doing that, but it needed to be done. And there's a contingency for everything if you ever lose communications. But I think what General Berger's trying to tap into is the fact that he who communicates leaves a signature. And what I mean by signature is if I'm transmitting anything, which today is ones and zeros, I'm putting off a frequency.
Sure.
If I'm putting off a frequency, bad guy's going to see where I am. And
Yep.
depending on how big the frequency is, the enemy can determine the size of the force that's emitting the frequencies.
Yes.
So how do we make a big entity look small? How do we make a small entity look big? Throw the bad guys off. So there's a lot of basics that are being reinstituted in communications that basically are old ways of doing things because it worked. And that's where you need to know both. So
I like that kind of thinking very much. I'm a communication scholar. All I think about is communications. All I think about is the Marine Corps. And I don't know why, it's just my thing. I think about it all the time. I always have in the last 25 years. And when there was this discussion and made public that the tanks were going to be retired, I can remember the great mourning. And I thought, there's no need to mourn this. The enemy will think that we're somehow, deteriorating. And I thought, no. Any worthy enemy will see this as a big threat. Any worthy enemy will realize the Marine Corps is reorienting its resources.
Yeah.
The Marine Corps there is great wisdom in abandoning tools that don't work and putting that resource toward new tools. So the enemy is thinking, what is the new tool? Do we know what the new tool is? Do we know what the new weapon is? That's when the nervous happens.
Right.
That's when the fear and trembling occur. So as a communicator, I thought that was a brilliant communication strategy.
right.
The part of the Marine Corps to say, we're abandoning tanks. Because any real enemy is thinking, what the?
Yeah. I can tell you what he's thinking. Oh boy, what are they going to do with all that money they save from, putting gas or fuel in all those tanks, right? They're going to reallocate resources. Because let me tell you something. Marine Corps is a rifleman first and always will be.
Always.
However, I guarantee you right now, somewhere, there's a Lance Corporal with a keyboard that can do way more damage to the enemy with a keyboard stroke than an M1 Abrams can do. So that's where we're evolving to.
Well, I assume, I'm one of these people who assumes that everything I do, every single thing I do, could be made public online because of just what you're saying. Most of the time it's not going to be. But if my son is a computer scientist, he works for Lockheed Martin. He tells me, you have no clue. You have no clue the access. Your phone is just your whole life.
Well, that's the problem, right? So if our homeland has access or somebody within our borders has access, it's almost guaranteed that our adversaries have access.
That's right.
Yeah, that is, you might as well just assume that you are compromised somehow, some way. And if you insist on still utilizing technology as a tool in any way, shape, or form, you just have to assume the risk. When you get out of your car and walk into the grocery store, you assume the risk that somebody could pop out and rob you at gunpoint.
Yeah.
If every time you get behind the wheel of a car and you go out, you assume the risk that you could be in an accident, hurt or killed. There's always an assumption of some type of risk in everyday life.
Yes.
Now you just made it somewhat a little easier for the bad guys in the fact that now instead of being overt about it, in a physical sense, now from anywhere there's internet access in the world, you can set up and do illegal things in any way, shape, or form. But now we're talking, state on state, or now you've got guys or these rogue hackers out there that actually go out, gain access to networks, and then broadcast it on the dark web that they've made access to such database or such network, and let the bidding begin. Who's going to buy that access from them?
Right. And I remember do you remember? I'm sure you do. The London newspaper published a picture inside the Pentagon, taken inside the Pentagon from somebody's computer camera by a Russian KGB, and it ran big in London, big in Paris, bottom of the barrel in the US, published. But I can remember thinking, well, now, isn't this interesting? This is not somebody sitting in their mother's basement. This is government organization making a point. And if they're doing it, certainly we're doing it. But what is the point? What is that point? That we're in each other's computers, that we know exactly what's going on in each other's computers at the highest level?
Yeah. It pretty much is. It's like anything else. You can put a fence over your yard, but if somebody wants to cut through your yard, they're just going to hop your fence, go through your yard, and go over the other side of the fence, right?
That is the benefit of what you're doing, of what the commandant wants, of the future. From my perspective, that it's not. It's so controlled in a way. It's so well planned and precise in a way, in ways we've never had the opportunity to be previously. One awful thing about this past war, this war we're wrapping up, I guess we want to say is wrapped up, or we're wrapping up, is the 97% of Marines lived through their injuries. But there were so many Marines who lived through awful injuries. So many Marines who lived through permanent injuries of this TBI or PTSD, or the worst case scenario is the combination of it. With all of the IEDs and various explosions that they were exposed to, those injuries, there were so many injuries that it was just a messy war, such a messy war. Now,
I'm glad, if I may, Mary, I'm glad you brought that up, because here's where I think directly where technology can make a play in active duty, in the active duty ranks in the Marine Corps. And I'm just going to talk about the Marine Corps. I'll never forget the first time I was down at the Wounded Warrior Regiment on Camp Lejeune. I was working for Dell at the time. I was the Dell rep for the Marine Corps. We had an opportunity to take some desktops that were allocated for another DoD customer that they didn't need anymore. And they were brand new, still in the box. And we had the chance to, as Dell, where I was like, I know exactly what to do with them. So we worked the back channels up at C4. Headquarters Marine Corps got involved, and they accepted the gift. And we had them delivered to the regiment, the Wounded Warrior Regiment down at Camp Lejeune. I was down there on business to see, I believe it was the MEF, and then I made a point to go over and see the regiment to make sure that everything was good to go. I was quickly introduced to a young captain who was sitting behind his desk. And at the end of our conversation, he went to stand up but had to reach back over and grab his crutches because he was missing both legs below the knee. Took everything I had to keep my composure. But the thing that kept my composure was It was two Marines having a conversation. He was still a captain. He was still a Marine, and I treated him like one. No special treatment whatsoever. That's what I thought he deserved. But he was going to be medically discharged. And being in IT, I'm thinking, you know, the Marine Corps is having to build out this cyber MOS within the Marine Corps. Why does that Marine have to get out of the Marine Corps? If that Marine wants to stay in uniform and still serve his Marine Corps and still serve his country, take him from that and train him in cyber, which they're talking about. Cyber tech. What is what? So that would have been probably 2007, 8. And so now, Yep. So I would say, I would challenge all the chiefs of staff, find a way to keep that service member in uniform if they so desire. I mean, here's a captain, obviously well-educated, made it to the rank of captain in the Marine Corps, probably no dummy, wants to probably stay in the Marine Corps. Let him serve out his time, but he has to do something else. What a perfect IT, anybody can sit at a desk and bang on a keyboard as long as they've got this and this, right? If he can't carry a rifle anymore or do a ruck run or swim, so what? He can still serve his country. And I think the cyber MOS is the perfect avenue to get Marines that aren't able to fulfill a physical role, but can still serve their Marine Corps in a mental role. Yeah, they don't have to go to boot camp. They've already been there, done that. They already have esprit de corps. They already know how to press their camis. They know how to get to work on time. They know the rank structure because they're Marines. Let them stay Marines, but just do a different job. And I think the cyber MOS is the perfect place for them to go.
So talk about that, cyber MOS.
All right, so a few years back, it became a permanent MOS to where you were a communicator or network communications officer. Now they made it a cyber MOS. So there's one for the enlisted, the warrant officers, and of course for the officers. So we're now it's a dedicated MOS, and the cyber school for the Marine Corps is that I believe it's at Fort Gordon. The Army let us go to school there. And I think they go to school there after they're done their communications school out at 29 Palms. And then subsequently they'll go to obviously the wants and needs of the Marine Corps. But I know they've talked about making Marine Corps Cyber Command a permanent duty station. And another opinion I have is if there's an individual who's a genius in cyber, you know, and he goes to college or university somewhere, gets a degree, but he'd like to serve his country and wear a uniform. Why not go in that pool of resources in the universities and get that resource, put them in uniform at a permanent duty station and make them a cyber for the military? And what I'm suggesting is, if you take a really bright kid in high school right now who's thinking about, yeah, I'd like to join the military, and he's really good, he's got that cyber mind about him, and he's really good, technically proficient in around information technology. Yeah, it'd be really cool to go in the Marine Corps, but I don't want to go through Paris Island. I don't want to do all that, right? You know, but he goes to school, and it's still kind of needing at him that, man, I'd love to go in the Marine Corps. I'd love to go in the Marine Corps. I'd love to serve my country in uniform, but I don't want to go play those reindeer games that Marines do. I think it would be a really good opportunity for DOD in general to tap that resource and provide an opportunity for those, call them what you will, geniuses, cyber geniuses that have a unique gift that are really, really good at what they do, and let them serve their country and give them the rights and benefits of a veteran while they serve their country.
You know, that sort of white hat, I get it. Yeah. I think that you, with your experience, especially speaking, having served as a Marine, you have a very powerful voice to advocate for that. And all these years of knowing what the outcome is for Marines providing the service within the Marine Corps and finding people outside the Marine Corps to come help the Marine Corps.
Yep.
I would encourage you to approach leadership of the Marine Corps and ask them what you can do to just have a conversation about it. Because if the Marine Corps clearly is looking to solve this innovation problem, and like you say, the Sheldon Coopers of the world are out there, but they may be intimidated by some of the rigorous athletic demands, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way.
Sure.
It seems to me, I can't recall the program, but there were programs during World War II where people served and they received benefits, but I can't, like civil servants,
Sure.
something like that.
I'm sure, I believe it was like an auxiliary or something.
Exactly.
Yep. Mhm.
But paid well, and then lifelong benefits of in the same. Yeah. It's not out of the question to think up something like that, especially in this narrow little niche. It's sort of a pilot program, but I do think that you could do this.
Well, I know that to hold the line on, earning the title Marine is earned, right? Not given.
Of course it is.
Maybe the compromise would be, okay, we get our medical services from the Navy,
Yes.
i.e. our corn. And we love our corn.
I'm sorry.
Especially when you got a hangover. Doc, help me out. Maybe that would be another service the Navy would provide the Marine Corps, as those IT cyber services would come from the Navy in that permanent duty station, in that permanent MOS, where it would be a Navy asset or a Navy member serving alongside the Marine Corps in the cyber realm, like the doctors and such. However, they didn't earn the title Marine, but they're serving alongside, right? I have an uncle that served as a Navy doctor during Vietnam, and after he finished his residency at Georgetown, he went through the paperwork with the Navy and just went down to supply and got his uniforms. He didn't get OCS, he didn't go to boot camp. He's going to go be a doctor, but he was flying from ship to shore in helicopters, patching Marines and bringing them back. But he didn't go to boot camp or OCS, but he was still there. And thank God for it. However, the cyber MOS, if they're going to be sitting in a skiff somewhere in a fixed location and they want to serve their country, I think there should be some sort of way to reach out and tap that resource and let them serve their country.
I like it. Because I like it. I like going through the Navy model of that, but attached to the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep.
And I do think that you are you have a unique credibility to bring that along. And I do hope that perhaps that your idea will be heard by the Commandant's audience.
Well, I can't imagine. I'd be flattered if it did, but I can't imagine being General Berger and Sergeant Major Black today, because the amount of weight that's on their shoulders with, the war winding down, where we've been for the last, good Lord, 17 years, 18 years almost. I thought for sure my two seniors in high school might have ended up over there, because they leave the summer for boot camp.
In the Coast Guard.
Right. Yes, they are. But with our threat now in the Pacific Rim, we're going to have to think a little different. We may be going back to our roots, but we are definitely not going to fight the same way that we did, 75, 76 years ago. So we got to think a little smarter, but still be a Marine amphibious unit to our Navy. And how are we going to do that moving forward? And I think General Berger's got his work cut out for him, but I also believe that he can do it.
Culturally speaking, again, I always bring this back to the culture of the Marine Corps, is that General Berger, when he was 5 years old, no one ever said to him, you are going to become none of the Marine Corps. It is predestined by your family or your heritage or whatever that you're going to wind up become none of the Marine Corps. He was an ordinary person, ordinary American, an ordinary child, an ordinary young person who did extraordinary things to become the highest ranking Marine. And that, I love that. I love that about the United States, and I love that about the Marine Corps.
Yeah, because I'll go ahead and just be Marine here on this comment that never forget he's a Marine first.
Right.
But we have to fight for our survivorship all the time. You know, our relativity within the global fight. And unless we evolve, which General Byrd is trying to tell everybody, we have to do it through information technology. That's where I think people need to listen, that we are evolving. We may be an amphibious force, back to our roots with the Navy, but we have to do it a different way. And luckily, we have a leader that has the foresight to say, hey, look, sorry guys, got to get rid of those tanks, but we need to invest more in information technology, and here's why. And I think that says a lot about Lieutenant General Lori Reynolds, who's probably done a really good job of messaging that to the Commandant, both General Neller and now General Berger, on where we need to go as a cyber force within the Marine Corps to be a weapon, not just a deterrent, but an actual offensive capability within the cyber force. That's where the evolution of the Marine Corps is going. You know, whether it's the rifleman or now with the cyber Marine, we can do some damage. So, and I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. I love it. Listen, if anyone in our audience wanted to get in contact with you,
please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It would be the best way.
okay.
Please. I am absolutely flattered to do this. Anytime I get to talk about my Marine Corps, ask my friends and family, I'm all talk. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm still proud of them. Still proud to call myself Marine. It's the best thing I ever did. I only served 4 years, but best thing I ever did.
Well, you served 4 years in uniform,
Yes.
but it seems to me that you're still serving the Marine Corps.
Oh, I've been chewed out by Marines in a suit before. So yeah, you could say that. And once they know you're Marine, yeah, or whether or not it makes a difference, I don't know. But yeah, they know I'm a Marine. I've taken a butt chewing a time or two, and I deserve it. I mean, I'm the tip of the spear for my company. We didn't do something right, you know, they're going to let you know it, because the Marine Corps got all memory. So if you don't do right by them, it's going to be really hard to earn their trust back.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Well, Meriwether, you certainly made it very easy, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it. I love this kind of thing. And like I say, I want to see you do something with that idea, because it's a good idea. And I think that if you have a Commandant of the Marine Corps coming out and asking for the press to help him find solutions, he's looking for solutions. It's been fun.
I appreciate you.
So what do we think of that great idea he came up with, huh? I think the Commandant's going to love it. Now, the chore is getting it in front of the Commandant. But I can do it. I think somehow I can do it. Anyway, have a great week. Have a great month. We'll catch you in March, and Semper Fidelis.
Core Stories, Ordinary Marines, Extraordinary Lives.